Cora is coming. Okay, welcome everybody. This is our last AMA for the summer. We're featuring higher education today. I'm super excited that you are all here, and we have a slate of fantastic panelists, and I'm super biased, I know, because they're my immediate coworkers. But they're super awesome, and I know you'll be just as inspired by them as I am every single day. So what we'd like to do is first just set the tone. So I'd love if you guys can play around with the reactions. I love seeing like the clapping hands, the hearts, everything down there. Also, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. We will try to get to them. And also, if you submitted questions, we'll also try to get to those as well. Yes, thank you for those clapping hand emojis. Yes. What's cool about that is if you click on reactions and you see the ellipsis, the 3 dots, if you click on that, you actually get access to like every single emoji. So I like to use like the alien one or the lightning bolt just for a little fun. Okay, so as y'all know, we are here representing EOP today. So EOP is a program that serves first-gen low-income students, and our entire staff, everyone here, we are here today to just talk to you about how we got here to EOP. So first, I would love to introduce the speakers. Again, my favorite people ever. So first of all, I'm going to have you each introduce yourselves. Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves and what drew you to work at EOP in the first place? So I'm going to have Zach go first.
Oh, what's up? Okay, so what drew me to EOP? So I was working at the county of San Mateo at the time, but this is about 2 years ago. And I just happened to come back on campus, and I was chopping it up with my boy Gil, who is the director over SSS Trio. And we was just talking about like, you know, all the hard work that he put in and other advisors put in on helping me to make sure I graduated and everything. And I was like, man, I want to like give back. I was like, I've been having fun working with the county and everything, but it's like, I want to get back into the school systems and start helping out. And so he was like, oh, you know, they're hiring an advisor right now. And he's like, oh, but it's like 1 o'clock, but the application got to be turned in by 4. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, today. So I did it out of his office so quick, got on my car, drove home real quick, went up on the computer, revised my my resume and everything, turned it in like I was doing like a last minute project with the last few seconds left up on there, and was able to get the application in. And so I ended up doing well in the interview and everything. So I'm here now. So get to come out here and help out, get to meet all you lovely people and everything. So I get to have fun with this and get to help out some people the same way that I was helped out. So hope that any of my students, if you're in here, please don't hesitate and hit me up. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm always here for you to help you out with anything that you need. So get at me.
Woo. And in case y'all didn't know, Zach, Kim, and I came in at the same time. We started at EOP Advisors together. And also Zach is not only an EOP advisor, but he also advises the Guardian Scholar Program students too. So
ESP, let's go, baby.
Kim, you're up.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kim. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I got started in academic advising when I was in undergrad at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So I was a peer advisor, and that's kind of where I realized I wanted to continue working in higher education. But working as an academic advisor, you need like a graduate degree of some kind, which I didn't have, graduating with a bachelor's in English Lit. So I started working in higher education through financial aid. That's a higher ed position that you can get without a master's degree. So I worked in financial aid immediately after graduating from UH. And then when I got to SF State, I was still in financial aid, but still wanted to work in academic advising. I knew that's what I always wanted to get back to. And when I saw EOP had an opening, I applied. And I am currently in the process of getting my master's. So I think that definitely helps. You really do need like a graduate degree of some kind to get into advising. So yeah, that's how I found my way back to EOP. I was a trio student at UH Manoa. So I did get to take advantage of the first gen experience. So it's kind of nice to now be working with a program who serves that population.
And if y'all don't know, TRIO is one of the programs under EOP. They help students in their first 2 years at university through advising, tutoring, all that good stuff. And again, we share the same office. Okay. Last but not least, Noah.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'll start my story back in high school because honestly, I didn't even really know about college until my senior year. I was just the only reason I met college requirements was because I was hanging out with my friends and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna take a calculus class over the summer. You're down?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm down. Let's do it." And then I started just kind of hanging out with them and applying to scholarships. And before I knew it, I got like a scholarship that would pay for my undergraduate degree, right? So without really thinking about it much, I chose Cal Poly SLO because they had a teacher education program. And so that was like my main goal, to be an educator, to be a teacher. And it didn't really work out that way. But like when I was in the program at Cal State, like I knew that I still wanted to work in education, just not teaching. And so I applied to, and I was also part of TRIO actually in high school. But I started working over the summers with a program called Upward Bound, which is a college prep program. And that's kind of how I got my first taste of like, hey, I like this college preparation situation. And I would help students apply for scholarships, apply for university. But I started noticing kind of a trend though, like we would send them off to these great schools, UCs, CSUs, but then they would come back and you know, they ended up not completing their degree or having to come back to community college, which is perfectly fine. But I was just wondering like what's going on in higher education that we're sending these great students out there and they're not hanging on, they're not staying. And so I ended up pursuing a master's degree in guidance and counseling because I minored in psychology, and that kind of helped me get my foot in the door into that master's program. And then after I got my master's in guidance and counseling, I quit my Upward Bound job that I had gotten, full time to be an academic advisor to become an AmeriCorps member. So it was a full salary job that I left to become an AmeriCorps member just so I can get a taste of higher education. And they placed me at Cal Poly Pomona in the College of Engineering, which I knew nothing about engineering, but it was a service program and they kind of just deal with the people they have. So they placed me at Cal Poly Pomona. And that's where I started seeing another issue. Now, the students there at Cal Poly Pomona, the engineering students, they weren't graduating, right? Our Black and Latino students were not graduating at the same rate as the white students, right? So that was like, what's that discrepancy all about? And so that's when I decided to pursue a doctorate in educational leadership to try to address these issues. And I ended up choosing the topic of Latinos in engineering, which I'm currently doing right now. I've been doing it for several years now. I feel like I'm dragging it on, but I'm this close to the finish line. I promise it's gonna get done. And so once I finish, that doctorate program, I'm technically gonna be kind of like an expert in the field of engineering education, where I can go into university and pinpoint an issue and try to provide solutions for that problem, which, depending on the school and the population of the students can vary from school to school. But that's where I'm really interested in continuing my work in helping students complete their degrees in STEM or in any field they want. But it just takes an additional layer of support. And that's why EOP is the program that to me does that for folks. And that's what drew me to like working with EOP. And that's why y'all see me in your emails so much, because I just want y'all to win. I try to send you the opportunities that I think will lead to success in your education. So that's kind of my spiel.
Thank you. Y'all kind of touched on the next question I have. What is really unique about higher education and the world of student affairs is that you don't necessarily need to major in education in order to work in education. So we all come from very, very different backgrounds. Since I have you here, Noah, I'd love to jump into the question. So for you, you are often our students' first line of contact and bridge to EOP and the rest of the university, as we all know from your amazing emails. And having been deeply involved in student life at Cal Poly and AmeriCorps, you're always helping our students find opportunities, scholarships, and mentorship, right? And we can definitely sense how much you love working at EOP. Can you tell us about if there's anyone in particular who kind of guided you toward higher education?
I would say it was, I mean, there's definitely my fraternity, right? I had a fraternity that I was a part of, and all of them were actually engineers now that I think about it. And, having them as a support, and that kind of helped me get through my higher education. And I felt that that was something that not everybody experiences. And so I was kind of interested in how can I become that person that helps folks, right? And when I think back to my advisors and not ever really using any advisors, right? I went to my advisor so that she could sign a petition so I wouldn't get kicked out of school, but I didn't really have like a mentor. And so really like those experiences of not having a support system kind of pushed me to be that support system for other people. So I know it's kind of a different take on the question, but really my lack of support or accessing support, because I know sometimes the support was there, I just didn't get it. It pushed me to be like, how can I be that person that's a constant for students? And so that's my answer. Like just my own experiences of barely getting by, barely having the GPA to get by, barely getting enough units to get by. Like I wanted to definitely for people to learn from my experiences and help them kind of overcome that and recognize that it's not going to be a linear path. It's going to be a bumpy road, but you can still get through it.
Gonna switch to Kim. Kim is our go-to person in our office for financial aid questions because she actually used to work at SF State's financial aid office. And so also on top of being an amazing EOP advisor, she's also earning her master's degree in equity and social justice and education at SF State, though. So a lot of Gator pride here. Can you tell us more about your journey into higher ed? So for instance, you worked in schools not only in Hawaii, but also in the Bay Area here in California, right? And then financial aid to EOP. Like, what are all these shifts about? Like, how did you get from Hawaii to here, essentially, in terms of your higher ed journey?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, I started off as a peer advisor. So I did peer academic advising when I was in my undergrad, which just kind of sparked my love of advising. Like you could have conversations with students who I worked for the College of Business. So I particularly worked with students who are trying to finish prerequisites to get into the business majors. But you could have a conversation with a student who doesn't want to be a business major. They are going into it because of family pressure, because they expect that the salary is going to be worth it, but they don't love it. They just kind of chose it as a default of some kind. So you could have conversations with students and completely do a 180, and they want to actually be like, one student wanted to be a math teacher. And I was like, yes, we need more math teachers who are passionate about math. Like we don't want teachers who are just there for, they got tenured and now they're there. So I really fell in love with like hearing other people's stories and student stories and what they're passionate about. So that was during undergrad, and I couldn't get a job as an academic advisor right out of undergrad. So I started in financial aid at a university in Hawaii. And moving to California was on a whim. I didn't have a job when I was coming here. I found a place to live like a week before I moved. So it was very on a whim. I wouldn't recommend it. But I did end up getting hired at the University of California, San Francisco, in their student accounts division. Then I moved to Mills College in financial aid. Then I moved to a smaller college called the California Institute of Integral Studies in the Mission, doing their financial aid. And finally, I ended up at SF State in financial aid. The entire time, though, I knew that I wanted to go back to academic advising. I do not regret working in financial aid. I love the knowledge that I have now that I can help EOP students, figure out their FAFSA or their California Dream Act. But I didn't get to work with students as closely as I had wanted to in financial aid. So I had always consistently been on the search for like academic advising positions, maybe ones that didn't require a master's degree, but a lot of them did. And every time I moved to a new institution, I kind of looked into their degrees to see if there was anything interesting that I wanted to pursue. Tuition waivers are great, guys. If you plan to work in education, tuition waivers are fantastic. But SF State did have
What's a tuition
program.
waiver, Kim?
Yeah, so if you work full time, or if you have like a parent who works full time at a university, you can get a tuition waiver where the institution will pay for potentially half of the amount of tuition for the classes that you're taking. So tuition waivers are great, yeah, if you end up working in higher education. It was serendipitous that at SF State, they have a Master's of Education in Equity and Social Justice. And Julia actually finished that program as well. So kind of following in those footsteps, but yeah, that's how I ended up at SF State. I started the program and EOP had an opening, and luckily I was pursuing that master's program at the same time, which I think just kind of helped with the application process. But it takes a long time to kind of find a place that you fit into. I have obviously been to a bunch of institutions, both private, public, previously like for-profit, and you just have to find a fit that's really great for you. SF State is by far the longest that I've been at one institution. So you got to find the right place, the right people, and sometimes you find the right program at the place that you end up to. Yeah. Hopefully
Your trajectory from like English lit to like financial aid.
Yeah, I didn't
to equity work. Like, I love that.
As an English lit major, I took stats, and that was it, because that was like the minimum.
That defined your life.
Yeah.
Like that one stats
doing financial aid, which was not what I expected. Sorry to all my math teachers who I told them I wasn't going to use algebra for the rest of my life, because I ended up using it for like half of my career. And yeah, I just knew that I wanted to work one-on-one with students again. And when EOP had an opening, I just went for it. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but if I don't apply, I'll just never know. So that also comes into play. Sometimes your experience really helps. And I think being in financial aid kind of helped that too. Yeah.
Trying out different fields, right? I think it's so important for our students to remember that you won't always know what's next, right? You don't have to have the answer all the time. We get to choose a lot of different paths in our lives, and be open to the opportunities that come your way. Zach, hi Zach, a forever Gator. You were in SF State's EOP when you were here in undergrad, as well as part of the very first trio cohort. Since then, you have gone on to do so many things, including earning your MBA, your Master's of Business Administration, not to mention working as a mental health specialist and a personal trainer on the side, all while you're also working here with EOP students and GSP students. Like, I don't know how you handle all of that. How do you find the time? But with your broad skill set, what brought you full circle back to SF State and the world of higher education?
I just say it's all about just wanting to give back, because like it was so many different people who, when I was in undergrad, they was like helping me out, talking to me, and like really like pulling me to the side and having those real talk conversations that made it to where it's like, hey, I feel like I could do a lot more, here than I could, doing accounting and all that. So that's what pretty much brought me full swing all the way around. And I wanted to be back on my yard, I came here in 97, So it's like, I just wanted to be back on the campus, see how everything is going, help some folks out. And what is even better is like being able to work in a program that helped you out, and then being able to be, since I'm a ex-foster youth, and group home kid, and then have a program like GSP, that's on campus, that works with kids and youth that are in foster care and group homes, I was like, oh, I'm knocking out two birds with one stone, working in this with EOP. So I'm like, oh, I'm all the way winning all the way around. So that made me very happy. And I was like, oh, cool. I get to just be all up in here working with it.
I know that you said you worked with foster youth as well. I think at Redwood City, right?
Yep, Redwood City.
So that was already your foray into working with younger students, right? So a question to all of you, actually. Let's see here. So did you always know that you wanted to work in education and specifically with like college aged youth?
Well, I'll start it off. First, I wanted to be a teacher. So I got my bachelor's in liberal studies with an emphasis in science. So I wanted to be a science teacher at first. So that's what when I first went to college and thought about doing. I almost went into social work, but I kind of got away from that a little bit, but I still stayed in it because I still worked in mental health, and I was working at a mental health facility, still doing case management and everything with the youth there. So it's like I was doing it, but not really doing it because I'm not putting them in different placements and anything like that, or taking them out of situations. But I was constantly helping them out and helping them maintain their mental health and deal with and like reignite themselves back into society and everything else.
And with EOP in particular and at SF State, right, based off of the student population, our college students' age ranges go from like 18 to like 65, whatever you want, right? So what is it about like that transitional age of maybe between 18 and 21, 24 that really appeals to you? Like, why is this the target demographic that you wanted to work with here at EOP? I was asking you, Zach.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I would say like it's just like a lot of these students, they know what they want for the most part. You know what I'm saying? The ones who don't, it's like you get to guide them and it's like help them to try to figure it out. And it's like just being able to just be there and it's like really talk with them. You know what I'm saying? Share with them a lot of the things that happen in your lifetime, some of the mistakes that you made so they don't have to make them, and so you can use yourself as an example and everything. So that was something that was real good on working with on that end. Because like I said, I've been working with youth for so long, being able to work with, young adults and grown adults, that made it even more funner.
And Noah, you and Zach are similar in that you both wanted to be teachers at one point, right? So why higher education in particularly this age group?
For sure. So, I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. So I thought I was going to be like with the little ones. And then they put me in the classroom for like observation hours. And I just did not, they're jumping on the table. It's just like too much for me, right? So, and I have no discipline like with kids at all. Like I'm like the fun person to be around, but I cannot like tell kids what to do. Okay, the story about Upward Bound. So when I started working over the summers for Upward Bound, actually that, earlier I mentioned that I didn't really have folks to push me towards higher education, but the director for the Upward Bound program, she's the one that really showed me the ropes of like, that you can find your home in higher education, because you're going to be helping students that are similar to you that didn't know about college until we put them on. So I really felt that kind of close connection, and I was college age and I was really close in age to the students. So it was kind of like a peer advising element to it. And, as the years went by, on the third year, I was already kind of an expert while I was still a college student about the college admissions process. So I was like, ooh, okay, hey, I could do this. I could do this for a living. And then when they hired me on to be the full-time like academic advisor, I felt really at home. Like I felt like I was really doing what I was intended to do. And I wanted to just keep pushing and the university was like a dream. Like it felt so unattainable at first because all the university, and it was a system that I was sucking at when I was in school, right? And so when I did the AmeriCorps program that I mentioned earlier, even though I was not fully salaried, I was literally doing 1 year of service, which meant like 1/3 of the salary that you would normally get as a university employee. That's when I knew it felt right because I kept going. I fulfilled the year. I even served a second year of AmeriCorps. And because it felt right, it felt like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And then finally, I got hired full time to work at Cal Poly Pomona. I even worked at the chancellor's office. And then earlier I mentioned how like while I was just kind of browsing around, this position of mentor program and summer bridge coordinator came up, which was exactly what I was already doing. And I was like, this is perfect timing. The universe is lining things up for me. And I applied to like 6 or 7 different positions at SF State, 6 or 7 different interviews, and EOP is the one who chose me. But really, it's just I feel like things line up when you start taking your shots, and it feels right. So it felt right to be here, and it felt right to be in higher education because it's a system that's full of like mystery for younger people. And here we are being able to kind of decode it and share with y'all how to survive and how to succeed and thrive here.
So going off of what you just said, it brings me back to a memory I have of where I was 18 before I met a Southeast Asian American woman who held a PhD, right? Before then, I had no idea that I could work at a university level, right? And that was a big deal. Like I needed that exposure and like someone to kind of pave that path, right? So for Kim, my question to you is, did you have a similar experience of like knowing that higher ed was something that you were always going to pursue, or was it something that just came along later on?
It definitely wasn't when I was in high school that I thought I was going to work in higher education. I was
Who puts that on their like like little kids when they do like what do you want to be when you grow up? No one writes working in higher ed or like college advisor.
That's not something that I think anyone sees can be a legitimate like career option when you're K through 12, like when they ask you in the first grade, what do you feel like you want to be when you grow up? People come up with like veterinarian or a scientist,
Astronaut.
Yeah, exactly. So I was completely directionless leaving high school up until my junior year of college. And then I entered the Manoa peer advising program. I also didn't know at that point that I wanted to be a peer advisor. It was a paid like scholarship position. It's pretty much like a federal work study position. So I was like, cool, I get to work a job. And it just so happened that I ended up being in a position that would lead me to what I wanted to do for the next 10 years of my life. And so that was pretty serendipitous. Yeah, getting into higher education wasn't the goal, but it ended up that way. Yeah.
I love that. So again, y'all, we're trying to present a whole bunch of different routes to get into higher education because none of us took the same path to get into this field or to work at EOP, right? We come with very different experiences and backgrounds and communities on our back, right? And now we get to all work together. Yeah. Okay, and speaking of EOP, how have your own first generation college experiences shaped how you approach your role as an educator? I'm going to go with no way.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I am a visual learner, so I always have to have the questions in front of me. So I appreciate you asking. How have your own first generation college experiences shaped how you approach your role as an educator? So like how have all the things you've been through, navigating this world of like getting into college, surviving college, graduating college, how has that shaped like the workshops that you do or your intention with your students or just your philosophy in life,
For sure. So I kind of hinted towards this, but when I was in my undergraduate, like I got on academic probation like 3 quarters in a row, right? So I got the boot basically. And I remember the first thought that came to mind was, oh man, what am I gonna tell my parents? Like I've been out here, and this was on my 4th year already too. So I was like, man, I've been wasting my time out here. I just got kicked out. Like I was really just like thinking about how I was gonna let everybody down at home. And I was just kind of accepting it. And then something in me was just like, nah, they can't kick me out. There's no way. I'm gonna just go into the office and ask, to see what can be done. And so at the time, I walked into the dean's office and I was like, hey, look, I'm in my 4th year. I literally can finish in 2 quarters and y'all are kicking me out and I don't feel it's fair. And they're like, okay, well, I'm going to sign this, but you have to promise me you're going to do well. I'm like, yeah, done deal. Boom. So they reinstated me. And at that time, the policies were probably different, but I just felt like, man, all I had to do was kind of be present and go in there face to face and tell them the situation. And we fixed the problem. And then I graduated, 2 quarters later. And so that's kind of how I approach.
Self-advocacy.
Yeah. I feel like the way I pursue my how I help students is with that in mind, that how can I help students realize that they're their biggest advocate. And sometimes I'll be the intermediary, but ultimately it's that I want to show y'all that you have to advocate for yourself. That's the ultimate goal. Like sometimes we can have a hookup, a connection, but ultimately it has to be you that drives this advocacy for yourself and show up in spaces even if you're not fully qualified. There's a lot of times where people don't apply to jobs because they don't feel like they're fully qualified, but that's beyond the point. Like people get jobs because they advocate for themselves and they make up for their lack of skills in other ways, right? So my thing is you're always going to be worth it, and you're always going to just take a chance, and you never know what's going to happen, but you have to show up, you have to be present. And that's what I feel like I like to share with students, is like, just try it, see what happens, let me know how it goes, because I want to have a genuine conversation so I can help the next person. And also you have to pay it forward. Like if something happens, if you get a scholarship, if you get a job, you got to teach other people how you did it. And that's how I feel like I go about my job, is showing people that it could be done and helping people help other people. And then we all kind of become this big community that shares resources and helps each other win,
Teamwork makes the dream work. And also, like, with I think our entire staff being first gen, like we have a very deep understanding of why we're here and the intentionality of with which we work. So again, the same question, but to Kim this time.
Sorry, I'm gonna look at the question again. I thought I had it.
Visual learner, total respect.
I definitely try to remember all the mistakes that I made in undergrad as a first gen student, and try to, as much as possible, direct students away from those same mistakes. And definitely, like Noe had mentioned, self-advocacy is super important, especially as a first gen student who's trying to navigate this on their own. I know it's hard to find a voice, but that's super important. I think a big thing that I learned in undergrad that I wish I had guidance my entire way through was that burnout is extremely real. And like the first year that I attended university, I thought the same thing that a lot of first year students think, which is I took 6 classes in high school. I can definitely do that my first year at university. And that was the biggest mistake I ever made. But I did it for 2 semesters in a row. And I passed my classes, but I would not recommend for a student to do that on their first year, because after that, it was just complete burnout. So, when we talk to students, I think it's a lot of personal experience that we're taking into that. And I think I also try to let students know that the expectation of 4 years is not it's not a requirement. It's not mandatory. If you're taking your time to figure out what you love and what you really want to pursue in life, then that's what you want to go for. You don't want to choose the default, like my business students who I had met in undergrad. You want to go for what you truly want to do. And if it takes you a little while to explore through the GEs what it is that you're passionate about, then do that. And that's what we're here for, is to help you explore in ways that maybe you don't have guidance for. And I think having that experience in my undergrad, like not having someone be able to explore different majors with me, I had that maybe like the first 2 years, but during your junior and senior year, when that's kind of vital, EOP was not there for me. So I think just being able to provide some guidance of like, hey, you are not stuck in this one particular major. If you have found that something else excites you, then let's explore that as well. So yeah, I think it's just bringing a lot of those personal experiences in hopes that students will not make the same mistakes, and that hopefully we help them find something that they find worth fighting for themselves, you know, that will bring them to the self-advocacy point, that will bring them to taking maybe 15 units a semester to finish it. Yeah, so.
Thank you, Kim. And I would love to ask the same question to Zach. So how have your own first generation college students experiences shaped how you approach your role as an educator?
I would say for me, it was just looking back at a lot of stuff that I saw that I needed help with, and utilizing the resources and utilizing people and networking, understanding the power of networking, and also just like what are some tools that I think that will be good for somebody else to learn while they're in school. That's why I like doing a lot of the finance programs and everything, because I know that was a big thing, because that's the one thing they come into college and they be pushing up on you all the time, like get this credit card, and then next thing you know, you rack up all this debt. You already got debt from student loans and everything else, and now you got this credit card debt too, and it's all hitting you up over your head, and you're trying to get this money to pay for everything, and now you're overwhelmed, and it's like you don't need to have that happen. And also, like Kim said, like just you're in school for you. So if you feel like you need to take this 3 classes, 4 classes, or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying, take what you can handle. Don't try to overdo it. Don't try to just join classes just because your friends told you, oh, Dev, take this class. No, talk to your advisor. Make sure that you're taking the right classes, the right stuff that's going to be with your GEs, what's going to be with your major, you know, because you got to get to that minimum, that 120. So just understanding all that, so you're just not going to school for a long period of time just for no reason. And you end up finding out like, oh, I could have graduated a year or 2 ago, you know, but I've been taking all these extra classes that I didn't even need and everything like that. So I just put it like that. And I just make sure I'm always talking to all my students about all that.
Thanks, Zach. So my next question, it's going to be focused a little bit more on mental health, because as EOP staff, our job requires that we be holistic in our care, right? That means we try to consider every part of your being and your identity and what you lead with when we are advising you and supporting you. So it often means that we are also wearing many different hats. So whether it be academic advisor, counselor, financial aid Sherpa, advocate, event organizer, community outreach person, like just all the different things. How do you practice mental resilience and self-care? Let me start with Noah.
Dang. So when the pandemic started, I'm very like I feed off people's energy like in person, right? So I'll be the type in the office to go cubicle to cubicle just to see what everybody's doing, and shoot questions off, or just have a quick minute or 2 conversation before I go back to my office and kind of like do my work. So it was really tough for me, like to not actually physically be in the space with everybody. And I think everyone felt that too. But one way that really helped me was just kind of cold calling people and saying hello, just how I would in the office, right? So I just like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? How's it going? Like, why are you calling? Like, just because. And I don't do that as much now, but that was one thing that definitely got me through early on in the pandemic. But then in general, I'm a hobbyist. I feel like I take on a million different hobbies. So I do T-shirts on the side for a hobby. I play the guitar, or I play the guitar. So I'll sit down and just play the guitar for 10 minutes to get my mind off stuff. I'm super big on documentaries, which sometimes actually stresses me out because it'll be like on aliens or like, what's wrong with the world. But things like that, I know what gets my mind off everything else. It's music, it's creating something with my hands, or making music. So I definitely, I know I have those options for myself, so I keep that handy. But ultimately it is speaking to like my friends and my colleagues about just normal life, not even work, just, just let's have a conversation. I'm a big talker, so and I feel like I hit people up so I can have a conversation, and that really gets me through.
Thank you, Noah. What about you, Kim? How do you practice mental resilience and self-care, carrying everything that we carry?
Definitely kind of leaning on colleagues a little bit, because that's kind of how you get through a lot of the work stuff. I feel like just being able to bounce ideas off of people, especially if there's a situation that maybe is overwhelming at first, just being able to talk things through with colleagues is really great. But outside of work, just being able to decompress, binge Netflix. I'm sad they took The Office off, and Parks and Rec, but there are other shows to binge. So definitely Netflix, but also just going outside, like for a walk, can be really relaxing, especially during the pandemic when we were just inside in front of these screens. And I'm sure students also felt that, just taking classes on a screen, doing your homework on a screen every day, Monday through Friday, can be really exhausting. So just being able to take a step outside is really great. Yeah, just being able to not think about work for a little bit. Yeah.
I used to squat by Kim's desk because she's by the window. And sometimes, like, especially in August, okay, so in August, the month of August, there's like no sun where SF State is. And I would just like squat next to her and just talk about everything and nothing. And like, that's how we would try to survive the day, because it does get really heavy working with the population that we do. And also just like it gets compounded throughout the year, right? Like we're dealing with financial aid situations, we're dealing with like housing situations, we're dealing with like academic situations, just a little bit of everything. And we also have to be mindful of what's going on in the world, right? Not only the pandemic, but what social situation is happening, right outside our door, in the countries where our students are from, just a lot of that, right? And so for Zach, as someone who has a background working in mental health, how do you practice self-care and mental resilience?
I try to make sure I use my self-control plan. And it's like just making sure I'm using my, my breathing techniques, just making sure I take my time to meditate and not, like to center myself so I can focus in on what I need to do. And so I don't stress myself out. I always got to look at it as far as what I can control, I'll concentrate on, and then things that are out of my hand that I have no control over, I don't let it stress me out. And so I just try to make sure that I just utilize that. And I also just try to talk with my all my students and let them know, like, I'm always here for them. Anytime they want to talk, they can talk to me about anything. They can email me or just call me up if they just want to feel like they need to vent, about their professors or whatever. They can just hit me up about that. So they don't always have to just think like they only have to call me for their academic issues or anything, or if they need something, like something with their housing or anything like that, they could just call me about anything. Like we always tell them, it's like we're like a family atmosphere. And so it's like I'm like an uncle, what I'm saying? Or if they need me to be like a cousin, I'll be like a cousin. And so I'm just here for you. I just want to see you succeed. And so don't hesitate to hit me up and let me know what's going on so I can better help you out. Because if you don't let me know anything, how can I help you? Because if you come at me at the last minute and it's like, oh man, that program is done, or they don't have any more of this, or oh, they just got rid of the last laptops, or oh, they don't have that book in anymore. Like if you'd have let me know a little earlier, we could have jumped on that. So that's how I go about utilizing it.
I also remember that Zach used to schedule in like daily walks, which is really, really awesome, because I think like sometimes we just get stuck in our own heads for too long. And especially, again, the gravity of our work can be exhausting sometimes. And so sometimes I would like chase Zach around the campus and try to look for him. But yeah, like Noe also mentioned, like hiking or long walks outside, like being outdoors is a really great way for us, I think, to just process and also just clear our minds, fresh air. Yeah, thank you all for sharing that. My last conversation question for you all. What advice do you have for students considering careers in higher education or student affairs? Kim, would you like to start?
I would say try it out. You won't know until you actually are in the position whether or not you like it. I enjoyed financial aid for a few years. I just knew in my heart and soul that I wanted to go back to advising, and that's how I got back here. But yeah, I would say just try it. If you're interested in any part of student affairs, you can try admissions, you could try working for a particular department. I would say just try it, but also I think students need to go in understanding that it is a job of love. There's not necessarily a lot of compensation, monetary compensation, but I think everyone here, all of the advisors, I see Renee too, we're all here because we love what we do and we love supporting students. And if that's what you want to do, higher education might be it for you. Student affairs might be it. Yeah, and I think also going into higher education, there's, like Zach mentioned, you can't take everything personally. There are some things that are just completely out of your control. There are federal regulations, federal policies, and I think I had a hard time wrapping my head around that when I first started in higher education. But there are things that you have to work, there are rules that you have to work within. But sometimes, like our EOP advisors do, we have workshops that sometimes try to break out of those boxes and break out of those systems. So yeah, and then also being open to the diverse student populations that you might be working with, right? So you could have, like Julia mentioned, we work with students from age 18 to 65 who have different backgrounds, different experiences, and different questions. So just being very open-minded to the position and the people you might meet, I think is great. Yeah, I think that's it.
And never assume you will learn everything. We're constantly asking questions because there's always something new to learn.
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry, just to
ahead.
add like one more thing. When I was in the peer advisor program, their like number one rule was be comfortable with saying, I don't know. And that is true for every student affairs position that I've been in, whether it was financial aid or as an academic advisor. Saying I don't know is valid. You may not know, and you don't want to pass on misinformation. So it's always a good phrase to have. Just admitting to it, I think, is valuable. Yeah.
And a great advising strategy is, I don't know the answer, but let's find out together. You don't have to figure this out alone, y'all. We got you. Just a quick question to add on to Kim's response. How did you find your job at SF State in the first place? So if students are interested in working in higher education, how did you start that job search process? Yes, Kim.
Whatever institution I was planning to work at, like SF State, I just put in San Francisco State University employment opportunities, and it'll show up. I think the SF State one it almost looks like the old Craigslist site used to look like. So it just kind of has a very basic format that it's listed, but a lot of places are like that. You can just type in the institution and then employment opportunities. I have also institutions have tried to recruit me on LinkedIn too. So you do want to keep that updated as much as possible, keep it current, because people can reach out to you on LinkedIn as well. Indeed, I think there's one specifically for higher ed jobs. So I checked out all of those, but I think the main ones would just be going to the institution itself and looking at their like human resources site.
What about you, Zach? I know that you found out about EOP through Gil, so networking. But in general, what advice do you have for students considering a career in higher education? And also like, how did you step into this world?
I'll just say just going around, just checking out the resource center, going to any type of workshops that they see that's going on, that's talking about job opportunities, going to any type of workshop that your major will be having, so you can go about on looking up any information that's in that to where you like, so if you want to know some different things that you could do within your field, that's a great way of just networking and also finding out different avenues you could take. And also if you see somebody doing a position that you like and you're curious about it, ask them if you could talk with them and sit down and interview them and just pick their brain. So you could just understand, like, is this something that you might be interested in, and be like, oh, what is your major? Like, especially if you're undeclared or anything like that, and just be like, oh, what did you get your bachelor's in, and what type of skills are you utilizing mostly in this position and everything that could help you out, and that'll be the best way to go about it. Don't hesitate to ask somebody.
Exactly.
You never know, because sometimes it's not about what you know, it's who you know.
That's life, right? And again, I think students get really nervous emailing faculty, right, or staff. So we highly recommend that you just, take the plunge, because you never know what's going to happen. And they have access to opportunities that, us at EOP don't have access to. So we definitely want to make sure that you're reaching out to as many people as possible and building those bridges. And Noah, same question to you.
For sure. I think my biggest regret in my undergraduate was just not doing anything outside of like my student org, which was my fraternity at the time. So I suggest that you take the time while you're in school right now to explore different, internships, fellowships, undergraduate research, because these are the experiences that end up leading you to your next step, whether it's in higher education or somewhere else. But you have to have some experience in the field that you're interested in, right? So I posted the tour guide information, because the tour guides at SFSU have to know about the different buildings, the different departments, and that would actually give you a good sense of like what the university is all about. They train you to know about these things. And so another thing I wanted to point out was at the university, there's like so many employees doing different things. It's not just advisors, it's not just counselors. It's like IT people, psychologists, program coordinators. There's something here for you if you're just interested in working for a university, period, right? But you have to, like Zach said, ask those questions, talk to people. When you see a position, even read people's email signatures, like, oh, what's that position about? What does it mean to be a summer bridge coordinator? And find out if they're hiring, throw out that you have work study to people, and definitely take advantage of the career services, because that's where you're gonna find certain jobs on campus that will lead you to experiences that ultimately will help you decide what you want to do for a living. And I'm gonna plug two programs right now that I think people should take advantage of. Well, one is called the Gator Leadership Circle, and the other one's called the President Leadership Fellows, where these places are going to help you do that. They host workshops where they'll help you kind of understand what your skill set is and where you would be best suited to work in. So I put the link there. It's two different programs, Gator Leadership Circle and President's Leadership Fellows, which is currently taking applications, right? So I think if you take advantage of the services the campus offers, that's going to help you understand where your purpose lies, and what experiences you like and didn't like, and help you understand what you want to do as a long-term career. But also, I feel like nowadays there's no such thing as like long-term careers, because for me, I've only been in a job like 3 years, 4 years, and then I book it because I want a new experience. And I think higher education allows you to do that.
And you brought up such a great point, Noah, where again, it's not just finding out what you like, but also what you don't like. So like, for instance, both of us spent some time working with the little ones, and we were like, no, maybe this is not a good fit, right? So higher education, because it's so broad, like maybe you want to do teaching, maybe you want to work in student affairs, maybe you want to do administration, whatever it is, like it's a pretty cool field where you get to explore a lot of different areas, work with a lot of student populations. But yeah, Thank you so much to all three of you for answering my conversation questions. I would love to open the floor now to anyone who has questions for our panelists. So feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask. We also have a couple questions that were submitted earlier. But yes, feel free. Ask them anything. That's why it's called an AMA. And you can also ask Renee, who's also here. Hi, Renee. Look at the questions just flooding in, y'all. Nobody has any questions?
I have a question, but I just don't know how to put it because I have so many.
Please ask. We can break it down one by one.
Okay, awesome. I want to just thank everybody for speaking and given this opportunity for us to kind of give an insight of what SF State and just your education and careers have taken each path, and I think that's amazing. So thank you. But I guess my question is, I'm a little non-traditional, first gen. 32, and I have a lot of experience in like supply and demand, restaurant, business development, and I'm going into like a whole different field, which is psychology. But I also have like a passion for community engagement, nonprofit organizations. And I just want to know how I can use my skills from my past experiences into what I want to pursue in psychology, because it's kind of like going back to the beginning, right? I'm going into something and then I have to look for a job that will fit my experience that I currently am pursuing at school, but it's not at a pay that I was once getting before. So I think that's my challenge. And I guess my question is, how can I use my experiences from my past and also get into the field that I'm pursuing now? That's a very challenging question. So I hope anyone can answer that.
Before I let our panelists take it away, I think it's so important to remember that our lived experiences, like everything up to this point, is valid. It is so important that you recognize all these things as skills. For instance, like de-escalating a situation, like you know how to diffuse a tense moment, you know how to advocate for yourself, you know how to deal with like difficult customers, you can calculate tips off the top of your head. Like these are all skills, right? And I think that the workshop, right, it's called the workshop, right, that is presented through Summerbridge, like there's some really cool resources there where we're trying to flip the idea of what we consider as valuable skills, right? Because we all come from really, really different backgrounds, but they shape who we are and how we see the world. And these are all assets. So I'll let the other panelists take it away from you.
I 100% agree with what Julia was saying. I think working, in like business development, you have soft skills of working with people. You're probably really good at communicating.
Psychology.
Yeah, that's all psychology. You'll be working with different communities. So yeah, I think don't discount the soft skills that might not necessarily be taught in classes. You can't teach someone how to have people skills. So
read people. That's
yeah, exactly. So I think listing it down on your resume, it may seem odd, but when you get into some kind of interview, you can always, talk about how those experiences can help you in the future, right? And in different situations, like Julia said, like de-escalation, you probably have a lot of experience with that another applicant might not have. So bring in all of your lived experiences and don't discount anything that you've worked hard to learn.
Great, thank you.
I think that I try to understand her question, that she might feel that if she got a job right now, the salary is not compatible than what she was making before. Is it what she meant?
Yeah, that was a little bit of what I was asking. but I
Yeah.
guess how I wanted to
The
use.
the reason I think that I understand you because I also come into the situation. Yeah, but I evaluate which is more important for me right now, what I want in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you.
I make a lot before, and I fell down. I stay at home, and then later on I figured out that I want to go back to school, so I went. So don't look at what you make right now, and look at your future picture, what you want to be in the future, and what is your goal. Yeah, we kind of struggle if we have been working outside for a while and we go back to school. The way of we thinking is very different.
Yeah,
That's
and those are all great points. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, and
Totally
then
agree with everything you're saying.
right, and then Julia, I think that you if you can look up those messages, that's the one message. I think that someone's name is Senior, and then I don't know if she or he said that I think that maybe it's a he study in his own country some
I didn't see that.
subject, and his question is that see whether he need to retake it again at States. I think that if you can look at the question, you can answer the person.
Is it Sienna or Sienna?
Yeah, Sienna something.
Okay. You're an international student, took some courses in high school back home. Yeah, so we would have to go through admissions for that. What they'll have to do is, go through the international studies department. What is it called? Yeah, so they'll have to figure out what's going to convert here, right? It may not be the same, but they have like all the programs in place to be able to figure out all those articulations for you. But yeah, like don't start taking a whole bunch of classes that you might not need. So definitely the first place would be to go talk to your EOP advisor, maybe make an appointment with the International Studies Office. Is that what it's called, y'all?
Renee, would it be with
International, yeah.
OIP that they meet with, or would it be the Office of
Admissions.
International Programs? Is that, or is it
International admissions.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so please reach out to them, make an appointment, and they can take a look at your transcript and figure out what to do from there. Just in case you don't have to, retake a bunch of stuff. But when it comes to high school units, it's usually a little bit different than if you took community college, right? It's a different calculation, so it might not be able to transfer as community or as college units. So just be mindful of that.
I just wanted to touch a little bit about like kind of changing or adding something to what your career might be, where I feel like you can always find like how they connect the two things that you're interested in, right? So for example, I have a friend that recently took a job helping students to introducing them into tech, right? So they used to work for SF State, and now they're in a nonprofit as a director of a program that's helping people be interested in tech, right? And there's another program, that is on campus called the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Fellows, which they help students develop an idea, whether it be a program or a business, and they give you seed money, right? So if it's something that, you're thinking about, how can I blend these two together? It's just like a process that you have to involve yourself in the different industries that you'd like. And another program that I'd like to recommend is like the Willie Brown Fellowship. It's like to get a taste of what it's like to serve the community in San Francisco, right? And once you start seeing the different service opportunities, the different, things out there, you're gonna find how the two things come together, and potentially you're gonna create something new out of it. Something that hasn't existed, but this is how these two subjects intersect. And maybe like Renee said earlier, it's like the money will come once you kind of find what you're passionate about and how all of your passions come together, and that you might create something new or find a position that has everything that you want it. Then, it's kind of a trade-off sometimes in education with the money situation. But there are positions in higher education that pay $80,000, $90,000 a year. They're usually management positions, but you can become a director of a program like EOP or something that the university has. It's just a matter of time before you find that connection. And I'm just gonna share the Willie Brown. Oh, we have it on the resource guide, but
I just put it in the chat.
there you go. So it's just a matter of like finding different opportunities and taking advantage of it if you have a slight interest towards it.
And to be real with all of y'all, working in education is not the field you want if you want to make a crap ton of money. Let's be real. Okay. So it's very helpful to recognize that before you get into the field of higher education. I mean, you can always move up, like Noe said, like kind of climb up the ladder and like become director of different things or AVP or whatever it is. But I think with anything career-wise, you want to find something that you actually love and care about and are passionate about, right? So, at least for me, like what drives me every day is knowing that I'm doing something meaningful, that I get to hopefully make it easier for students nowadays compared to how I had to navigate my first gen college experience, right? And also working with really awesome people, right? When you're applying for jobs, you have to recognize that you're also interviewing them in a way, right? Like how they respond to you in an interview, what the work environment may be. Sometimes jobs sound really good on paper, but it's not going to provide you with what you're actually looking for or an environment that allows you to grow and thrive in a way that you may be looking for. But yeah, like we have so many majors and minors here. Like there's so many different ways you can mix and match things to kind of create your own path as well. Throwing that out there. Christina asks, okay, how is the master's program like in social work or school counseling? So we just had an AMA on social work, so we'll send out that information to you again. And we are actually thinking about doing an AMA on school counseling. So exciting that you brought that up. A lot of folks who do either of those fields do work in higher education, particularly if you do school counseling, right? But definitely keep an eye out for that future AMA, okay? We didn't do those fields, so unless Noah wants to speak about school counseling, because I think you.
Well, I mean, slightly. So at first I wanted to be a school counselor too. Like, well, at some point, I feel like I changed so many times, but school
which is normal, everyone. Totally normal. Totally normal.
So like when you become if you want to become a school counselor, you for like K through 12, you still have to get something called a PPS credential, right? So I did something called guidance in counseling that was more geared towards working in higher education, but it's just, essentially you take psychology courses and prepare yourself to help students with, their mental health. It's just, something that you have to look into really, but it depends on if you want to be a school counselor for K through 12, or if you want to be, a social worker. There's just different paths to take.
And with all those education-based programs, if you're interested in SF State's education programs, I put the contact information for Kim Correa in the chat. She's the undergraduate advisor for the Graduate College of Education. So if you're interested in the education minor, if you're interested in like figuring out what might be a good path for a master's degree in education, or like how you can become different things or what you're looking for, definitely go talk to Kim. Christina also asks, it's a great question. What are the benefits of higher education and what are the challenges in higher education? So maybe we'll direct it to our panelists. So maybe one of each, like, what do you love about the rose of higher ed and also the thorn? Give y'all a minute to think about it. And Renee, feel free to answer as well, okay?
I'm going to answer this really quickly. I think this really came up during the pandemic. We're a privileged bunch, okay? The things that folks were complaining about was just, I couldn't believe it. So I think sometimes that's a little irritating. Otherwise, I think what's exciting every year is the beginning of the semester. To this day, I am still that nerdy person who is so excited about the first day of school, petrified, I'm not gonna lie. petrified, but still really excited. And the same with graduation. Graduation is so powerful and beautiful. It's
Especially for our EOP students, you're the first in your family to graduate. That's a huge deal.
it's huge.
And for us to be able to be a part of that journey, just even in a small way, is like, that's what motivates so much of like what we do and why we show up to work. Anyone else want to answer that one?
Yeah, I would say like for sure it's when I get these emails of like, oh, thank you, you helped me get into a master's program, or you helped me get a scholarship. I'm just like, dang, all I did was like, serve as a soundboard and hear them out and like suggested them to do something. And then, they give me the thank yous, and that's all I need. Is just like, that gets me through the next day, or like an email that says, I got through this issue, or I completed this, or I got into this, I got this scholarship. It really feels good to hear that people benefited from your advice, or just a conversation they had with you. I think the thorn or like the challenge is sometimes, especially for me, it's hard to turn off my brain when I know students are having issues with something that I can't resolve, or that I can't really do anything about other than, forward an email or ask a question for them. And sometimes,
Mental resilience.
yeah. And so those issues stay with me until it's resolved. So I feel like I'm part of the student's life until it gets resolved. And it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's something that definitely weighs you down sometimes. And it's hard to turn that off, especially when you know a student's struggling with something that's out of their control. So that's kind of part of the challenge.
Anyone else want to answer that? We have another. Oh, Kim, go ahead. Or Zach. Anyone?
You go ahead, Kim. I'm like, I don't really know what else to add on. I'm like, y'all already said so much. I'm like, y'all.
Ooh, Zach, let me ask you a different question.
Go ahead.
So someone submitted this in the AMA RSVP sheet, and it's a great question.
Okay.
What would you say has been the biggest challenge you faced since stepping into higher ed, like working in higher ed? And how did you react to that challenge?
I would say the biggest thing that happened for me is like I'm a street dude, I like I said, I came out of group homes and foster care, so it's like I didn't really articulate myself a whole lot, but I just started being able to just being authentic and just being me, you know what I'm saying, and just talking the way that I need to talk and to get my point across, and then just being genuine all the time, and it just so worked out very well, So I'm able to move in a lot of rooms, talk with a lot of different people, and I can just always be me and be comfortable being myself and everything. I don't have to be over here feeling like I gotta be over here. Hello, sir, how you doing? And doing all this. I don't have to do that. I could just come and talk how I talk and get the point across. And a lot of my students love it. I'm able to articulate myself with them, help them out, and they love chopping it up with me and everything else. So I just love just going that route. And I'll just say just like being comfortable in my own skin, just understanding like I belong in that room just like everybody else who belongs in that room. You know what I'm saying? I got a higher education just like they got a higher education. So you're not holding nothing over me, and I'm not over here looking down on you. Don't look down on me. So we're all, looking at each other.
And those lived experiences, okay, y'all, like that's super powerful. That's super important to acknowledge and to recognize that these are skills and assets and really important perspectives that you bring. And again, not every work environment is a place where you're going to feel that you can be authentically you, like to lead with every part of your being. So finding spaces that allow you to do that is also really critical. And in higher ed, can be
I used to always find it funny when you be sometimes at some events and stuff, and it's like people will be afraid to talk to certain people because they'll look at them. And I just talk with everybody. I don't care what it is,
We all talk a lot.
Everybody,
so come talk to us,
Yeah, come on in. Let's have a discussion. Let's have some dialogue.
Kim, did you want to answer that question as well, if you have one?
Sure, let me look at the question again. I think the biggest challenge was kind of what Noe mentioned before, that there are some things that we just can't control, that if we had the power and authority to do so, we would give everything to the student. And I think one of the biggest challenges is that not at all institutions, but you might step into a room where you might be the person who cares the most, and you're like stressing over the student. They're in a situation and you're like, how can I help you? Like, what can I possibly do to try to advocate for you? And like Noah mentioned, there might be something that you just absolutely cannot do for them. Like they reached out already and they're not receiving a response. And I think that was the biggest challenge, is just like realizing that there are certain things that you can and cannot do in higher education, depending on your role in higher ed. You know, like as academic advisors, I can't, in my financial aid capacity, I maybe could have seen what was going on and like help make some changes, you know, been proactive and getting your documents in. But as an academic advisor, I don't have that authority anymore. So I think it's just recognizing what you can and cannot do in certain roles. And that's a huge challenge, because sometimes you also feel like you want to overstep some boundaries and you can't. Yeah, that, and I think the reaction was just kind of having to step back in some ways, which is also really hard. I think that's a daily challenge that a lot of us might have, that we can't step into a room with our students and be like, help them now, you know, but we want to, we just can't always be that person. Yeah.
I think that's definitely a really hard feeling for all of us to swallow, is like there sometimes are points in the road where it's you literally can't do anything else. Like you have exhausted every single option. And those days are super, super hard. So definitely having a good, strong community behind you, like colleagues, people you know, and just who understand the magnitude of your work, but also like how you are processing it, right? Because it's heavy when, especially we have caseloads, right? And we get to know our students on a much more personal level than other staff on campus. And yeah, it's definitely hard. Are there any other questions or any questions in the chat that I missed?
I have a question.
Hi. Feel free to ask your question. Hello, hello.
So I know the panelists who are speaking, it seems like they went for their bachelor's and then they moved on to their master's and stuff. So my question is, since I'm barely just going to transfer and I'm just thinking of doing the bachelor's, because I haven't even thought about the master's because I'm barely getting my foot in there. Can someone be able to get a job in higher education with a bachelor's degree, or would that be something that's kind of challenging for that person and they would really need to move forward with getting a master's degree?
I don't know anyone else's experience. When I was applying to places for like the academic advising, that required a master's degree. And I know that like administrative positions also require a master's degree, but I know for a fact that like financial aid does not require a master's degree, but that might not be what anyone aspires to work for in higher education. I don't know.
Don't discount yourself, Kim.
So if you want to work in financial aid, it doesn't require a master's degree. But Renee, do you know if admissions counselors need masters? I think it's a bachelor's degree, right?
Yeah, that you only need a bachelor's. And I was actually kind of felt overqualified. I was one of the few at the time that had a master's. But the smart thing to do is what I put in the chat is get that degree while you're employed for the university so that you get the fee waiver, which was something that I had done my master's thinking that would give me more when I came back to campus. But then I find out that other folks were pursuing masters while they were in working full time, and that made it amazing. the way to do it, including our director. Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of my friends who work in higher ed, again, it's not just one way that you can get into higher ed, right? You could get your master's and then apply for all the jobs that require a master's degree. You can also find a way in where, you work in a university, get your foot in the door, start in student leadership and then you work your way up, keep those connections, and then they can help open some doors for you, right? So be creative about it. And again, those networking opportunities are going to be really, really key, right?
I was gonna add real quick that I did end up getting my master's before I got into higher ed, but the step that I took to get my foot in the door for higher ed was participating, and this is gonna be in the resource guide, but oops, that's too much. But the program that I participated in was for recent grads to participate in higher education, specifically in STEM, but you don't have to have a STEM background, but that was my way of like, I gotta get my foot in the door in higher ed, and this is the way to do it. But it's a service position. So again, it's a fraction of the salary. So if you're able to sacrifice a year of your salary, like they give you money, it's just not as much as you would hope. And then the advising corps also is a way to participate in an advising environment that will also contribute to your schooling for your master's. So if you look at those two websites that I just linked, that could be a potential foot in the door, right? It's just the service corps is just one of those things that you kind of have. It's a year of sacrifice, but that's your foot in the door, and that could be a game changer if you're not going to get your master's right away.
And those are great. Those are great tools right there that he's putting out there. And like Renee was saying, if you're able to get into a position at a school where they're going to pay for it, where you're pretty much it's going to be 100% paid for, like take advantage of that. Just like how you get some jobs where they say like, oh, like 50 or 60%. But if you're getting something that's going to pay 100, just remember, that's a lot of student loans that you do not have to be thinking about having for graduate school. So sacrifice
or
that
the 4
year or
+
two.
1 programs, y'all.
Yeah, exactly. Because that could be so beneficial for you. Trust me. You do not want to have those extra loans on top of those your undergrad loans that you're going to have to be paying for once you're done with your education and everything.
Thank you.
I think there's a question in the chat. Let's see. Can you be employed full-time as an employee for the school and still be a student at SF State? And then there's a question about work study, I believe.
Yep. Yes, you can.
Yeah, you can definitely do it.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. And again, we
yeah.
hire for tutoring. There's a lot of on-campus jobs that, can help you start that networking, right? And again, if the school in any way can help fund your post-grad degree, consider it, because it is expensive. Financially, it doesn't cover it. So just see what are alternative routes that we can take.
Because I remember when I was in undergrad, I used to be a residential counselor and everything. So
They
I
pay
could
for
get free housing.
Yes.
I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll be an RA real quick, get that free housing. And then I was able to put that extra money that I would have used for housing to, to invest in doing other things when I was an undergrad.
And look at you now, Zach, back where you started in higher ed.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If you graduate for a BA or BS and you want to go to a master programs, what criteria they look at it?
Do you have a specific graduate studies program you're looking at?
Oh, the reason why I asked, because I have one of my friends, she recently graduated, I think she got a BA degree at State, and she applied for a master program. She was not accepted. And then I afraid to ask her how they look at. So
that's a great question. Like, we always want to know what prerequisites there may be, right? When you're applying for a master's degree program, they may have special requirements like you have to have a certain major, you need to have so many volunteer or experience hours. It may be that, you know, it's just a very competitive program. But yeah, it does help a little bit if we know what your major in undergrad is and then what the graduate degree program is, because the requirements differ depending on what graduate program you're looking at.
So it's not solely for the GPA, right? No.
So some programs require like the GRE, right? Or other post-grad exams, right, that you have to take, or GPA is always a huge factor as well.
I think that she told me that she was asked to write a tier 6 because normally BA or BS you don't have to. So I think that she probably her standing is very good. But why? And then I think that
every department has a different way of determining who gets accepted, and also they have a limited number of seats. I would reach out to that college or department and just see maybe what else they could have done or what they're looking for specifically.
And if she got turned down one time, she can come back next semester, right?
Yeah, so you can usually reapply if you don't get in the first time.
But had to be different semester.
Yes, you would apply for the semester that you're trying to start.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's 7:31 now. We're going to close out the room, but was there any final comment, question, anything like that?
I want to say thank you very much, because it's very interesting to like listen to all you, the panelists as a shared experience. And then, yeah, it's really nice. I was a little bit tired today, but so all the time I'm just listening.
We appreciate that so much. Like, that's why we do these AMAs. It's for you all to learn about different fields that you may be curious about, but also just to, you know, meet other people, connect with them, right? So any of the panelists, you're more than welcome to make an appointment with, to email them. We're going to provide everyone's contact information in the resource guide we'll be emailing out tomorrow.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because sometimes the participants, their questions also really interested, and then we can learn from there.
Yeah, and again, we'll send everyone's contact information, and we recorded the session, so you can always rewatch it on YouTube.
Good, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for coming. I hope you all have a good night. We really appreciate everyone. And please go get some ice cream, okay? Good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.